Hey guys, today we're going to be doing the Peplum version of the new Summer Cami bodysuit Peplum pattern. So there's 3 different options for the new pattern. It just released a couple weeks ago. You can do a straight cami, you can do a Peplum with a functioning placket, or the bodysuit which snaps. I believe that goes up to 3T. So we're going to be doing the Peplum. I have my 2 binding straps, my front and back bindings, 2 placket pieces, my front bodice, which is cut to opposites, not on the fold, my back is cut on the fold, and then my 2 skirt pieces. We are going to be starting by doing the binding. So there's a couple ways you can do the binding. First, find your 2 binding pieces. The smaller one goes to the front, and the larger one goes to the back. Did I say that right? Let me double check. I think it's the opposite actually. I think the back is smaller. So I have my instructions right here. So let's see. Binding for the front neckline, 5 inches for my size, and binding for the back is 4.25. So the front is longer, the back is shorter. So I'm going to do the front first. And because my front bodice is cut to opposites, I'm going to take my front binding and cut it in half. You can cut this on the folds, the front bodice, and bind it all at once, then cut the whole thing in half, but I find it easier to just cut 2 opposites and then cut this binding in half. So now the smaller one will go to the front. And what you do, one of the ways you can do it is just put right sides together, pin it on, clip it on. You don't even have to do that if you don't want to. And just go ahead and serge along the raw edge. You can see that the bodice has more slack. That's because you want it to pull. So you're just going to pull it so it's flush. You don't want to stretch the bodice at all. You just want to pull it till it's flush and serge or sew it on. If you're going to sew it, make sure you're doing a stretch stitch. I'm going to take it right over here. And just stretch and so now we've got that. Another way you can do it is to just sew it right on. So you memory press it on your iron. You can get a fold right in half, unfold it, and then fold each piece in each long edge right into the center memory press that you just did, and then in half again, and then you just stretch it as you stretch it as you sew it on. It doesn't really matter which way you do it. You can do it whichever way you're comfortable with. I do it both ways interchangeably, just based on what I'm feeling that day. So I'll show you both ways, like I said. And I'm just going to, sorry, you'll probably hear my kids playing in the background. And again, you're going to want to stretch as you top stitch it, but make sure you're not stretching the bodice at all. So just like that. I have my double needle in right now. I have it set on setting 1, which is my center needle position. And I have stitch length set to 4.5, and I'm going to turn my tension all the way up to 9. And that's what works best on my machine. So you'll have to play around with your machine to see what works best for you. And then just put it under, pull it just so it's flush, and start to top stitch. So kind of hard to see, but there it is. On the back you have those nice good V's or triangles. That's so you have stretch. That's how you know your tension's right. If that white thread was just a straight line, then that would mean your tension is off and it wouldn't stretch. Your thread would likely snap at some point while it's being worn. So I'm going to go ahead and serge this one on too, again, right sides together for the binding. There we go. And then I'm just going to fold it down a little bit so that it's equal in the front and back. And then go ahead and pin it so it stays in place. Stretch it slightly so that the top stays flush with the binding. Make sure you don't stretch the bodice at all. And then go ahead and top stitch. We got our nice V's on the back again, so we have stretch. And it's kind of hard to see because I chose a nice dark color. Yeah, top stitch. Okay, so now I'll show you the other way on the back. So I'll take my back bodice binding. I'm going to fold it in half and do a little memory press. I'm just going to do it with my fingers, but you can do it with an iron. And then fold it, the long raw edge, into the center press that you just did, and do the same on the other raw edge. And then fold it down right in half. So it's about a quarter of the size that it was before. I'm just going to pin it so that it stays while I'm getting it all situated onto the bodice line. So now here's the top raw edge of your bodice. I'm just going to take out one pin at a time. I'm going to start at one edge or one corner. I'm going to go and do the other corner. Making sure everything stays nice and straight, making sure that the bodice is all the way tucked up into the crease right there. And then I'm going to take off that middle one, and I'm just going to pull just until it's nice and flush without stretching the bodice at all. So I'm just going to pull it right until everything's straight, work my fingers over to the middle and pinch, and then throw a clip on it. Sometimes what helps when you're doing binding is to pull these threads out the back so that you have something to pull on when you first start, because you're starting right at the edge. Your machine isn't always going to want to feed through, and it might just get stuck there, just constantly going up and down without feeding until the fabric is all the way underneath the machine, or the presser foot rather. So I'm just going to take these threads. It's kind of hard to see what I'm doing, but I'm holding the threads and I'm just applying some tension to them, just not pulling, but applying tension until the piece is all the way underneath the presser foot. And then I'm just going to double check, make sure everything's tucked all the way up in there, and it is. And then just keep top stitching right across. Alright, let's check how we did. We got the nice V's, so we know we did good. Alright, so if you're using the measurements in the directions, the binding is going to be exact for what you need. If you prefer to have hangover at the front and the back, You can cut it longer than what the directions say and just go by the feel of the fabric. A lot of times that's what I do because some fabric has better stretch and recovery than other fabric. It really just depends on what you're using. So sometimes I just cut it much longer than it needs to be so that I can get a feel for it. And the more you do binding, the better you'll be able to feel for what it should be and what it should be stretching. But if you're new to it, just use the measurements that are given and know that it'll start and stop where the pattern pieces start and stop. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start a new video.